Hello everyone, welcome to Guelph Life. I'm your new host, Andrew Wood. On today's episode, we get to know our new Guelph Storm announce team, play-by-play announcer Ryan Drury and color commentator Mark Paré. Our Ryan Manahan sits down with both to find out about this year's team, both on and off the ice.
We've got a brand new season here on Rogers TV with the Guelph Storm, and we have a kind of new color commentary person here, and it's Mark Paré. Thanks for joining me today, Mark.
Thank you for having me.
So Mark and I, we go back a few years. We used to work up in Northern Ontario covering the NOJHL, and he still does some work with the Sudbury Wolves. But when we had an opening spot for a color commentator at Rogers and with the Guelph Storm, I thought Mark Paré is my guy here. So how did you end up going all the way from Timmins here to Guelph?
I ended up getting a job with the Rogers radio station in Kitchener-Waterloo in 2018, and sure enough, made the jump 8 hours down south to come down here, and I've been down here ever since. Now, it didn't work out after a few years at the radio station. Got let go last year due to some budgetary and restructuring reasons, but ended up finding a place doing Guelph Today as a news reporter there, and that's where I am now for my day job.
And when you got the job here for the Guelph Storm, I know you did stuff with the Storm and with the Rangers, and you do lacrosse and you do 365 wrestling. We're going to talk more about that later. What went through your head when you got the job?
Dream come true, to be honest. I mean, you know, as you touched on before, we did a lot of stuff with the NOJHL, of course, hosting a weekly show up there too. You know, hockey's always been my life. You know, I couldn't play it beyond from what I would have wanted to, but you know, the next best thing to stay involved with the game was to be a broadcaster. Started my broadcasting up north in Northern Ontario, calling games at North Bay. About 10, 12 years ago, I got it started. Moved up to Timmins, got my first full-time job with a radio station up in my hometown of Timmins, and slowly yet surely got my way into the NOJHL scene up there. Started calling games in Cochrane, did games for Timmins at the same time too, and that was something that I really loved and really enjoyed. But I knew that I wanted to kind of reach that next level. Some players, they'll reach Junior A. That next step up is the OHL, then AHL, NHL. That's kind of the progression that I like to see for myself. It's a slow process, it's a slow progression, but it's definitely a comforting one. Being able to do all those NOJHL games really prepared me for when I moved down here. Of course, when I moved down here, got involved immediately in the OHL scene, but it was just a lot of part-time jobs. I'll call you if I need you, kind of things. But getting the job with the Guelph Storm, this is my first full-time dedicated spot. I finally feel like I have a home now with Guelph. It's not to say that I don't have a home doing the Sudbury games when they're in this area, but Guelph, I really do feel like I have a place that I can call home and a seat that I can say that's mine, and that's something that I'm really happy about.
All right, talking Guelph Storm, what do you think? How does the team look this year?
I think they look great. I mean, last season they had a slow start. There were a lot of expectations, mind you. We have talked about it in the past. Ranked fourth in the entire country going into last season. Disappointed a lot of people in that sense. But really had a really good second half. Had a lot of veterans. Some of them, of course, coming back this year. I really do like the young crop that's come in. They looked really impressive going into the preseason. I think Damian Slavic, the goaltender, is going to be impressive tending the net this year with Braden Gillespie. You got the back end. Yes, Cam Allen is going to be out until, I believe, next year. Not next season, next year, I should say. But I think at the same time, too, that also opens up opportunities for a Quinn Beauchene, for a Ryland Singh. I think there's a lot of young, hungry players on this team, and I think that's only going to bode well for the Guelph Storm. You look at the forward units. I mean, Braden Bowman's going to be a leader on this team. Max Nemesnikov is going to be a huge leader on this team. Jet Luchenko is going to take that next step. Yeah, Vilmer Ulrichsen, that's come in through the import draft. He's a big body that's going to take a lot on the wings. I really do like the look of this Guelph Storm team, and dare I say it, this could be a top 4, top 3 team in the conference if they play to their potential.
All right, so you are the color commentator for 365 Wrestling, also shot here in Guelph at the Red Chev. You and I first met a long time ago. We've always shared this passion for pro wrestling.
Yes, we have.
Going back to Timmins, Rock Solid Wrestling, sisters company here in Cambridge, Crossbody Pro Wrestling. So, pro wrestling and hockey. You can take one wrestler in all of the history of wrestling, bring them into the NHL or into hockey as an enforcer. This is my last question. Who do you bring?
Because I know that he's got the genes, Chris Jericho.
Chris Jericho.
I mean, Winnipeg native. His dad was an enforcer in the NHL. I mean, I think you put Jericho into a hockey rink, you put him on skates, he would fit right in, and he would dummy a few players. Let's just put it that way. He's not as, he's not your 6'7", 275-pound monster kind of thing on skates. He is a smaller guy. He's a big guy, but he's not a big guy per se. But I think he's a guy that would hold his own on the rink.
Okay, teach this guy to skate. Haku, greatest enforcer in
okay,
hockey.
I dig it. I dig it. I like it.
All right, Mark, thanks for joining me in my home, and I'm so glad that you're on the team and can't wait for this season.
Thank you for having me. Looking forward to it.
We're going to take a short break here on Guelph Life, but when we come back, we'll hear from our Guelph Storm play-by-play announcer, Ryan Drury. We'll have more Guelph Life after these words.
It's a brand new hockey season, and within a few months, he went from the fresh face to the wily veteran. I'm here with Ryan Drury, the play-by-play announcer for the Guelph Storm on Rogers TV. Ryan, it's been a real big change. You're working with Mark and Scott this season. What goes through your head knowing that the whole team is just the whole broadcast team is very different this year?
Yeah, it's a weird feeling for sure. Stepping in when I did, to take over for the legendary Bill Granger on color with Steve Fitzsimmons, that was a daunting enough challenge. And then, within a year and a half, Steve's gone. And all of a sudden, you're thrust into the limelight, if you will, as the new voice of the Guelph Storm, which, was always a dream of mine, but I didn't think it would happen in the quick fashion that it did. And, daunting enough to have to step into Bill's shoes. Then, 12 months later, they're asking me to fill in for another legend in Steve, and, two guys that I have such respect and love for. They showed me the ropes, and, I'll always be thankful for that. But, stepping in this year, it's a weird feeling. It's a satisfying feeling because it's obviously something, like I said, that I've wanted to work toward my whole life. And, stepping in and being able to do it with two guys who have the same kind of passion for the sport and the team as I do, in Mark and Scott, it's a really cool feeling. And, also have to mention, Trevor Pryor leaving our broadcast as well. Yeah, it's a roster of kind of new faces, and I hope we live up to expectations for Guelph fans, because they deserve the best, because for over 20 years they got the best, and we want to make sure that we deliver the same type of product. And Trevor, Bill, and Steve, for my money, nobody did it better. So it's a cool feeling. It's a humbling feeling for sure.
I'm a northern guy. For the last few years I was working up in Sudbury, and that team is just one of those classic teams that those three guys working together for so long, everybody knew about them. I hope you guys become that team for us in the next few years as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's the goal, right?
So in terms of the team this year, what's the team looking like this year?
I think the team is really good. And I think some people were, after what they saw last year with high expectations that did not come to fruition for the first 3 months of the season, I think that people this year are kind of quick to write them off a little bit. I know that there's still some question marks in goal. They were there last year, with Braden Gillespie, who is a great young talent, but he's still very young. And then bringing in Damian Slavic in the import draft, people are still kind of wondering, what's that goaltending look like in Guelph? But what we saw out of Gillespie last year and everything that I've heard about Slavic, I think that they have a really dynamic and young 1-2 punch. It can never be a bad thing when you have two young goaltenders with this type of skill level that want to start and want to push each other. I think that's an advantage actually for Guelph, rather than some people maybe thinking it's a disadvantage. And then you look up front and on the blue line, they benefit from so many talented returning players. And we talked about it so much during our preseason coverage. That top line of Matt Poitras, Braden Bowman, and Max Nemestikov, they were one of, if not the most electric first line in the OHL going down the stretch after the trade deadline. And you supplement that with Bushinger, Cam Allen, who will have to wait to return from injury, which is unfortunate for Guelph. But you look down at acquisitions like Braden Hislop coming in to solidify the blue line, young players like Quinn Beauchene and Ryland Singh, who the team are really high on. I thought that in the one preseason game we covered as well, the other young guys, Parker Snellgrove, Will McFadden, they don't look like rookies at all. And then you supplement that with the Jake Carabellas of the world and, Ryan McGuire. Like, they have a really nice mix of really talented scorers and gritty sandpaper guys. And the biggest thing too is the room seems really together, and they did last year even when they struggled. So I think that the team looks like a very, very competitive team. And honestly, I really do feel like they can challenge for a top 3 seed in the Western Conference.
One of my favorite things about the games is the time before the games, when everyone's just kind of hanging out in the media room talking about everything. And I know you have a new podcast about the Guelph Storm, and I feel like that's kind of the tone on what the podcast will be like. What is the show that you're doing with the Storm?
Yeah, so I approached them last year and just said, hey, look, like, it would be a really easy thing to kind of do something somewhat unique. I know that, some of the teams have, dedicated radio shows and stuff like that. But to my knowledge, there's not a lot of, people taking advantage of the podcasting avenue. So we're launching a new show. It's called Eye of the Storm, a Guelph Storm podcast. The episodes will be, 20 to 30 minutes. We're going to start releasing them every Friday, starting with September 22nd. We're going to release a new episode all the way up until the playoffs, because of course, we don't want to bug the guys during the playoffs. And I'll just be talking with, staff from the team, the players, of course, and a couple other interesting voices from around the Guelph Storm fan base and from their history as well. The first episode's going to feature head coach Chad Wiseman. So, yeah, you're going to be able to find that on a YouTube channel that I'm going to make for the team. And the team is going to share the podcast every Friday, and you'll be able to find it wherever you find your podcasts.
Cool. So I just finished talking to Mark Paré, and Mark and I had a background where we both met doing professional wrestling in Northern Ontario. And when you and I first met, we found out, we used to play shows around in the same area here in the Guelph area. How did you go from music and get into broadcasting?
Yeah, it's interesting because, when I was in a band in high school, I was already really into sports. I've always been a huge sports nut. I'm sure people can tell. But, music is the one thing that I probably have a little more passion for than sports. I think that's probably common of a lot of people. It's music. It's such a connecting thing for so many people. And, when I left high school and, had college in front of me, this was always my goal. Despite, loving playing in a band and being a front man, and I still do it on the side. I have a little project called Clarence Street. If anybody wants to check it out, it's pretty heavy, I'll warn you. It's definitely not radio friendly. So, but if you're into that stuff, it's there. But this was always my goal. So, I never really had to make a transition, if you will, from music to this. This was always what I wanted. and music was and still remains a real passion of mine outside of sports broadcasting.
So let's say you had the controls of the PA at the Sleeman Center, getting ready for the game. You had to pick one song to hype up the crowd, starting off every game. What's the song you're picking?
Well, I mean, they've settled rightly so on Thunderstruck, you know, and it fits, you know, AC/DC, it's a classic, you know, that's a good hype up song. If I was in control of it, though, and I'm glad you asked me this, because like this is one of the questions I'm asking the players, like, hey, if you have control of the iPod in the room, you know, what are you putting on? And so far I'm getting a lot of, you know, techno, hip hop, some country.
Kids today.
If I'm in control, you're probably going to hear a lot of Knocked Loose, Turnstile. But if I had to pick one song, give me some Pantera, give me some Domination, Walk, any of those old Pantera classics. That's what gets me revved up. And I'm sure some of the players would maybe enjoy it, but maybe it's a little too heavy.
I'm right there. If I had to pick two songs to start off any day, it's Cowboys from Hell or Killing in the Name of Rage Against the Machine. Just give me those. I'm ready to take over the
Rage. Now that's, yeah, maybe a little Guerrilla Radio. Let's go. You're speaking my language here.
All right, Ryan. I can't wait to talk more hockey. Can't wait to talk more music with you throughout the year. And go Storm, go. And thanks for joining me today.
Thanks, man.
We're going to take another break here on Guelph Life, but when we come back, Sara Bowers-Peter updates us on Crime Stoppers Guelph Wellington. We'll have that segment and more after these words.
Hi, it's Sarah from Crime Stoppers Guelph Wellington. Thank you for tuning in today. Here is this week's Crime of the Week. Just after 10 p.m. on Tuesday, September 12th, 2023, a homicide occurred at a residence located in the area of Waterloo Avenue and Woody Crest Drive in the city of Guelph. The victim was a 37-year-old male who was shot and killed. The suspects are described as two black males wearing all dark clothing and were last seen exiting the driveway of 387 Waterloo Avenue. If you have any information about this crime or any other crime and wish to remain anonymous, contact Crime Stoppers Guelph Wellington by submitting a tip online at csgw.tips or calling us at 1-800-222-TIPS. If your information is used to solve a crime, you may be eligible for a cash reward of up to $2,000.
We'll have more Guelph Life after these words. Hello, my name is Andrew Wood, and I am your host for Guelph Life. Well, with my background in the media, I did a co-op at Rogers TV for 8 months from January to August 2023. I helped Robert produce Your Region This Week, if you know that show. So I was the guy who was doing the interviews, helping out with getting footage and editing a lot of the stories. Oh my gosh, did we edit a lot of stories in that time. And in general, that really helped me grow my passion for media and working in the television industry. And even from a young age, I did morning announcements at school, and I realized that I really wanted to be in front of the camera. I wanted to host things. I wanted to talk to people. And so getting this opportunity as a host of Guelph Life feels like a dream come true. There's quite a few, actually. One of them was covering a promo for the Foxwood Disc Golf Tournament. It was a beautiful day. It was perfect for disc golf, and I'd never played. And the attendants at that golf course were nice enough to let us try to throw a few Frisbees. I was terrible. I remember incorporating one of my failed throws in that story, but there was also a lot more failures. I believe the first time I did a long shot, it veered right to the right and landed on top of a tree. So needless to say, I wasn't good at it, but it was still fun to experience this new sport. And even now, I look at a little goalpost for disc golf and I think, I remember back to that. And I think, man, I would love to try it again. Another story that really sticks out to me is the opening of Zellers. My family have like kind of a history of going to Zellers a lot as a kid, and so just seeing the grand reopening of Zellers again and seeing all the old merchandise and seeing the Zeddy Bear again, it was really cool. I listen to the radio quite a bit, and so there's quite a bit of radio hosts around here. There's Fearless Fred from the Fearless Fred Show from 107.1. Angie Hill's also fantastic, part of Angie and Sarge in the Morning. Stu Jeffries from Boom 97.3. A lot of the people I look up to in media are currently in radio, but that's because I listen to radio a ton. Listening to radio is one of the things that drove me to actually drive more when I was 16. But of course, in television, breakfast television is a huge one for me. My family has been watching breakfast television religiously since I was about 5 years old, at least I can remember. My mom's been watching it long before I was born. But in general, breakfast television is a huge one for me. I would love to host something fun. I always felt like news is good, news is great to know, but I don't feel like I'm a news kind of person. Plus, I don't feel like covering a lot of content that's more sad in tone. I'd love to have a talk show where I could just talk to people, get to know people, even something like Your Region This Week, exploring somewhere and really delving into the culture and the events and hobbies of certain people. I love learning about things, so really, as long as I can grow and learn, I'll probably be happy. I mean, with Guelph Life, I would love to get better as a host. Hosting, I feel it's where I want to be. When I think of myself in the future and I think of where would I be most happy, I'd see myself in front of a camera having a conversation with somebody or going and exploring someplace. And so with Guelph Life, I would love to develop my host skills and be somebody that somebody could look on TV and think, wow, I want to do what that guy does. That wraps up this edition of Guelph Life. Join us again next time when we'll feature stories on the Guelph Horticultural Society. For all of us here at the show, I'm Andrew Wood. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.